about Jefferson as president. We were going to do this on Saturday before the weather got to us. So let's talk a little bit about Jefferson, the president, and some of the things that goes on during the Jefferson administration. This is our second sort of wave of change. America was a very different place in 1800. Most of the people were agrarian. Over 80% of the people were rural and farmers, and Jefferson embodied that. Thomas Jefferson was an anti-federalist, but he had become Secretary of State under Washington, had become Vice President under Adams, and now he is President in 1800. Despite the very difficult election of 1800, it's what you need to read about. It's the election of 1800 was a terrible election. But Jefferson is a man of the people. Doesn't like ceremony, doesn't like formality. You could go and knock on the door of the White House, and there was probably a good chance that he would answer it, probably in his work clothes. If he wanted to go anywhere in Washington, he got on his horse and rode there. So he was truly a sort of a man of the people. He wanted to, and he talked about this in his campaign. He wanted to reduce the size and cost of the government. He wanted to cut spending. He wanted to keep the United States out of war. He was personable. He was a pretty good guy. He picked a lot of people that were very good to help him. So he sets a good foundation. He wanted to, like I told you guys, cut the federal debt. He didn't like what the Federalists had done. He was not a big fan of Hamilton. The Hamilton Jefferson feud had been around for a while. And Hamilton thought that borrowing money was okay. Jefferson did not. So he wanted to cut spending and cut back on taxation as well. So he cut taxes, he cut the budgets, he cut the militaries, and it's a real sort of move away from the Hamilton sort of idea of borrow and tax and spend. This is kind of the end of the Federalist Party as well. With Jefferson becoming president, the Federalists are losing. They're becoming more of a regional party, and they're not going to be around a whole lot longer. The biggest thing that Jefferson's responsible for, probably his crowning achievement as president, is the Louisiana Purchase. Louisiana was the area that actually that Spain had controlled after the Revolutionary War that had now been given to France. Jefferson wanted access to the Mississippi River, and he also wanted America to have access to New Orleans and to have a port that they could get their goods out of through. And Napoleon was in a bargaining mood. And so Thomas Jefferson, who's pro-French in his foreign policy and always has been, decided to approach Napoleon about selling some of New Orleans or some of Louisiana to give America an outlet to get its goods out into the Gulf. Jefferson sends a couple of people over to negotiate with Napoleon, and Napoleon makes them a deal that they can't refuse. He's willing to sell a massive amount of territory for about $15 million. And Jefferson wants to do this, but there's a problem. Jefferson interpreted the Constitution strictly, and there's nowhere in the Constitution that says that the President of the United States can buy territory. So Jefferson has an issue. The way he decides to finish it is to sign a treaty. And we will essentially sign a treaty. It gets ratified by the Senate where we pay France for the Louisiana Purchase. Now, I'll go back and show you a map of this in a minute, okay? But really quickly, what Jefferson wanted to do is to go out and explore this area. And this is the creation of the Lewis and Clark expedition. All right, Meriwether Lewis and we'll go out and together with Clark, we'll explore up the Mississippi River, out into the Pacific. one of the most crucial people that they sort of got in league with is Sacagawea, who was a Native American. I think she was Shoshone, and she helps guide them. She is helps negotiate with the Native Americans out in the West for them, and she is crucial to the success of the Lewis and Clark expedition. And there you can see the map. So they leave St. Louis, they move all the way up here, and eventually all the way out into Oregon. So it is a huge success and a huge sort of victory for Jefferson. By the way, this whole area right here, this whole area that you see right here is the Louisiana Purchase. It doubled the size of the United States for essentially about 3 cents an acre. So now the western border of the United States has pushed out here to the Rocky Mountains. So now the United States encompasses everything from the Atlantic Ocean essentially to the Rocky Mountains by 1803. This is a huge victory for Jefferson, and selling or getting hold of Louisiana is incredibly important. The Now, despite that, there are some problems with Jefferson's administration. He was not a big fan of the he was not a big fan of the judicial branch. He is not all that big of a fan of some of the things that are going on. One of the biggest things is, and it's not really mentioned in this, is that Jefferson had challenged Adams's appointments of the judges right at the end of Adams's term, and the Supreme Court case had of Marbury versus Madison had essentially given the Supreme Court a tremendous amount of ability to review Supreme Court cases. Jefferson didn't like that, and he tried to have one of the justices impeached. It doesn't work. So that was not one of his more popular moves. But at the end of his first term by 1804, think about it. He had kept America out of a war. He had reduced taxes. He had gotten the Louisiana Purchase. Okay. But there are some real issues as he gets into his second term. The election of 1804, sorry, Jefferson wins easily. And the Marbury versus Madison case now has really tried to, or has put him squarely against some of the judicial branch. The Jefferson, despite owning slaves, would call for a ban on the slave trade. That's not going to make him very popular, and it's really, despite the fact that he's a Virginian, right? The that's not going to endear him to a lot of southern states as well. But most of the really the biggest problem that Jefferson faces in his second term, as he gets into his second term, is a brewing war. England and France were already at war in Europe. Napoleon and France were really trying to dominate most of Europe. England had gone to war with France. This puts us square in the middle. We were allied with France. We were British in our origin. And so this puts us in the crosshairs really of two major European powers. American ships had been seized, American cargoes had been taken, American sailors had been kidnapped. But Jefferson did not want to go to war. Despite the fact that an American warship, the Chesapeake, was attacked by a British ship, Jefferson still refused to go to war. His solution was the Embargo Act. In 1807, Jefferson, to keep us out of war, decided that we were going to stop trading with England and with France. And basically, he shut down American trade. The embargo really crippled American commerce and American trade. It harmed us, it harmed our economy. And although it does technically keep us out of the war, it was very unpopular at home. Jefferson will not seek another term, and he will kind of move into retirement after his second term. He will be replaced by James Madison. And we'll talk about Madison's administration of the War of 1812 in the next video.